Levi, are you there yet?
I am. Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Levi,
Hello?
I can hear you. I'm not sure
Okay.
if Teresa.
Yeah, she must not be able to.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Hello.
Hello, is this?
This
who am I
this
speaking
is
with?
Kev. This is Kevin Mahaney.
Oh, hi, Kevin. This is Teresa Francis with First Choice Advisors. We're trying to get Microix's audio working here real quick.
Okay.
So it'll be just a second.
Okay.
Levi, are you on?
Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, sorry about that. It must have been, I didn't know if it was my audio or yours. So, well, welcome everyone. Sorry for the short delay here, but I think we'll be ready to get going. My name's Teresa Francis. I'm with First Choice Advisors. We've been working with Microix since the 1990s and have several clients using both the budget and requisitioning module. Today, the presentation will be handled by Levi Giles. So Levi, if you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Alrighty, guys. My name is Levi. I work with Microix. Previously, I was employed with First Choice and Abilla, so I've got experience in our software suite quite a bit. Today, we're going to be talking about the budget module, particularly the workflow modules, the budget. We're going to talk about distributing worksheets, salary worksheets, all the details of the budget module. It looks like some of you guys do not have on. You might not be able to mute yourself, but if your phone has a mute button, feel free to use that to keep down the background noise. And then if you have any questions, you can either use the chat box or unmute and ask away. I don't mind being interrupted for questions as long as we don't, it doesn't throw us off too far off schedule. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen. Let me know if you guys can see this. We should be viewing my workflow modules homepage. Is that right?
Yes, I see it.
All right, perfect. So this is the page that loads up when you first log into the software. In the top left, it says My In-Process Documents, and this will show you in-process documents from all modules, budget, AP, PO, inventory. It doesn't matter. This little part up here is going to show any of your documents, which happens to include budget type as well. But you can't, click on them to get to them or anything. This is just a list. It's kind of an overview. Down here, if you're an approver, there's a little chart that shows your awaiting approval documents. So it gives you an idea of how many you have for each module that's awaiting your approval. And then if you use timesheets, you'd see the leave balance and pay period. And for requisitions, you'd see your top 5 vendors and top 5 items. So for budget, you're really only looking at this blue bar here, and it says type budget here on this page. If you're completely new to the software, there's a message board right here where your admin can leave you messages, please complete this worksheet by such and such date, anniversaries, happy birthdays, that kind of thing. So that's really it for the home page. And what I like to do before I jump too far into budget or any of the modules in particular is I like to kind of give you guys an overview of what a workflow is. Some of you may have the software, some of you may not. So I just want to give you an overview of a workflow and what it represents. So in the software, no matter which module you use, you have to create an approval process that documents go through, and you design that process. You can segment it based off of one of your segments, like you could do it by cost center or by department is pretty common, location, division, that kind of thing. But you set up your workflow, you assign filters, which are people who can start brand new documents, and then you set up your approvers, which is the process that those new documents are going to go through once they're approved. So this is a very basic one. Alternate means that they can act on behalf of the same person. So in this example, Thomas Twain is our general supervisor, but Annabelle is an alternate for that. So that means Annabelle has the same rights as Thomas. It goes from anybody on the requester tab to our supervisor, from our supervisors to purchasing, from purchasing to accounting, from accounting to documents approved. Documents approved is the status. When it becomes document approved status, you have to supply a session ID so that you can transfer the document to MIP. So this is just a brief overview, but this way when I say in a moment, workflow, you kind of know what I'm referring back to. You can restrict accounts, so you could choose a different, a program and restrict it just to this one program. Personnel, we're going to come into personnel when we talk about the salary worksheet tab. Until then, there's not a lot to add here. This is just where you list your employees, and you do that on a workflow by workflow basis. So most likely, this is your admin department and all their employees, your IT department and all their employees. And then that way, the requesters and approvers can fill out their salary worksheets for salary items when it's budget time. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but all of this is going to come together in a minute when we start using it. I'll make some reference back to this stuff. So I was just trying to give a quick overview there. So that's it for workflows. Once you have a workflow, the next step before you can start budgeting is to distribute worksheets. Yes, technically, you can come to my worksheet and go down to new and just create a new document. But as you can see, if I do that, it's completely blank. I would have to go line by line and set all of my information to do a one-line entry. I've already clicked about 50 times, not literally, but I've clicked quite a few times to make that one line, and then I would have to go to the next line and the next and the next. So this is not our preferred entry method. Instead, what you can do is distribute a worksheet that already has accounts on it based off of either historical activity or the budget template. Typically, you're going to use budget and actual activities, but I'm going to pop back over to worksheet just to show you where, if you do decide to use this budget workflow template option, that is the budget template tab right here. What that allows you to do is move over, like if you've never used the software before, so you've never budgeted, you don't have any actual activities for the previous year, then you can move over what accounts you would like to show up when you generate a worksheet. And it'll use this template to assign those GLs. Let me show you what one would look like based off of actual activity, and then I'll come back and discuss this screen a little more. So I'm just going to generate one here for workflow 103. And I'll come back, and like I said, I'll come back and mention what these are all for in just a sec. So I just created a brand new worksheet using that method, and if I open it up, you'll notice it's already populated with accounts. These are the only accounts that are in this worksheet are specific to the filters that I put here. So in this case, it's only Fund 1 and it's only Department 101. It's only GLs in this range. And it's only accounts that have either budget or actual activities. Now, you may find a line here that has 0 in one of these columns. What that means is they had activity, but they have a 0 balance. So for example, if you posted something and then you reversed it out, it may show up here because technically it had activity. But the idea here is once this worksheet's generated, here's all of the accounts. It's got Fund 1, Department 101, and every single account that had activity or budget. The year-to-date actual, actually all 3 of these columns are based on your history period. So they start with the end date and count backwards, and you can have 3 or 4 years history if you wanted. Let me show you what that would look like. I'm just going to change this to 3 years history. And I'm even going to have it overlap the current year because I would like to see year-to-date, for this 3 months that we've had so far. So I'm just going to check process and create a new worksheet. And you can have as many worksheets as you want. So now these 2 worksheets are almost exactly the same, except the new one that I'm about to open has more history and therefore more columns. So again, it starts with the end date, and that's why we see 2016 here, and then it counts backwards. So you've got 2016, you've got so far this year 2016 actuals, you've got 2015 actuals, and 2014 actuals. Your projected column is equal to your year-to-date actuals, your budget minus your year-to-date actuals. So if you had a $100,000 budget and you had 50,000 actuals, your projected would say 50,000, and that's projecting what the rest of the year's actuals might be. This column can be hidden, or sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. If you want it turned on, you can go to the workflow, and there's a checkbox right here to show edit current year projected column. If you check that box, it'll show up. If you don't, then it won't show up. While we're talking about columns, let me go ahead and give you the overview on our entire columns up here. So our columns can be moved. For example, projected 2016, if I don't like it there, I can move it over 1. If I don't want it to show up at all, I can just move it up here until it turns into an X, release, and it's gone. And I can do the same with these other columns. Now these will come back. If I close the document and reopen it, it'll be just like it was. Something useful in these columns is up in the top right. There's a little filter icon. So I can go up here and hit the filter, and I could filter for zeros. And now this is showing me the only GL I have that has a 0 actual for 2014. If I want to clear that, I can either come back in here and choose all, or I can come down here, and if I want to toggle it, I can just if I want to remove it altogether, I can click the X, and now the filter's gone. The only additional thing to add about columns that you can't see on this screen is I'm going to pop back over here and show you the same thing. This is your My Worksheet screen. So if I go to Budget, My Worksheets, this screen comes up. And again, we can move these columns, however we want. But there's one additional field here that wasn't on the previous, and that's this little box area above the columns. And that's another set of grouping. If I move that down, what it says is drag a column here to group by that column. So I could move my date up there, and now it's grouped by date. I could move my document status up there, which is the default, and now it's grouped by status. If I would prefer to see it by, workflow, date, any of these you can group by. So you could group it by whether or not it had an attachment, that kind of thing. But again, that's just grabbing the column, dragging it up here to where it says drop, and then you drop it, and you've got your groups. So I'm back on my worksheet. This is the worksheet that we generated a moment ago with the 3-year budget history. This is for the current year, 1/1/2016 through 12/31/2016. And now that I've, edited my description, I'm ready to begin entering my budget. To do so, I scroll down and locate the accounts I want to budget for. In this case, we're just going to pop down to subscriptions, and we'll put in a budget number here. Do note, this is the annual number. So if I put in 12,000, that's 1,000 per month. If for some reason it's rare, at least, I won't say that it's rare, but when you do need, in the rare case, to distribute this differently than 12 even months, you can utilize the monthly distribution column. Monthly distributions are a little interesting because they're actually an ID. So if I click over here in this box, here's all of my different monthly distributions. Some of these are based on salaries, some of these are based on allocations or distributions. If I don't know what these are, or I don't want to use one of these, I can hit the magnifying glass to create a new one. I hit the plus sign. Let's call this a 10-month distro. And I'm going to zero out January and February, and I'm going to double up November and December. I can save this, and now this $12,000, none of it goes into January or February, and $2,000 goes into November and December when I transfer it to Abilla. Now the cool thing about the monthly distribution codes is now that I've created that code, it's in the drop-down. So if I go to this other line and want to do the same thing, I just hit the drop-down and choose that same monthly distribution code. Okay, so now that I've got a couple of lines there, let me show you a common thing that organizations like to do is to narrate their line items. So instead of putting a lump 12,000 right here, they want to specify where that's coming from. So to do so, in the very far left, in the fund column, you'll see a little plus sign. And if you click on that plus, it expands so that you can list out narratives. An example of this might be a soccer program where you've got 40 attendees at $25 a person, maybe a summer school program. You've got 80 positions at 125 a head. And then this amount, which is subtotal for you here, becomes the amount that will be distributed annually. The line turns red so that you know it has narratives, and the narratives will transfer over as description lines into Abilla. I'm going to take a quick breath and see if there's any questions so far. All right. So let's discuss the buttons and the different options. So far, we've covered the basics. As far as if you're just a requester, you open your worksheet, enter your amounts, distribute it monthly, narrate it if necessary, and then you come up here to your submit button. So let's discuss these other buttons. The first button is delete. If the document has not yet been approved, you can delete the document. Once it's been approved, this button turns into a circle and it's a void, which means that the document will still be available to view, but it's not approvable. Save does as you would expect. Undo does not do as you would expect. This undo button only applies to the top half of the document information section right here. So for a budget document, that really, since all these other fields are gray, that really only applies to description. If you really need an undo button down here, there is one right here. In the bottom left corner, there's this little blue arrow, and that's cancel edit for if you're down here doing entries and you mess up. So again, this undo button applies to the top half. This undo button applies to the bottom half. And I very briefly touched on document information. Let me point out what I did there is next to where it says document information, there's a little arrow here. And if you need more space, you can click that arrow to minimize that section to give you a little more space in entry. While I'm on that topic, before we jump back up to the buttons, if you're doing narratives and you need more space, there's a little magnifying glass right here in the corner. If you click on the magnifying glass, it'll zoom in, it'll drill down to just those narratives. When you're done building the narratives, hit the little red X and it'll take you back. I said red, it's just a regular X. All right, the next button up here is submit for approval. Probably the most commonly used button. When you're done with your document, you click submit. It's going to tell you to whom it's being forwarded for approval, and it closes. If I need that document back, I can go to my worksheets and I can see this document, the one I just submitted, is in Annabelle Martin's queue at level 10 and has not been approved yet. So since Annabelle has not approved it yet, I can use my recall button right here and it'll bring that document back to my status so that I can play with it. I'm going to click edit to go back in that document and proceed to the next button, which is audit trail. If I click the audit trail button, it's going to show me a document was submitted, and I'm going to sort it by timestamp. I'm going to pull the category here so it's not grouped, and then I'm going to sort it by timestamp. So at the bottom, it was first approved, and then a minute later, it was recalled, and we can see that. Now I'm going to resubmit it and then come back to the audit trail because I want you to see the detail. So let me submit here, send it to Annabelle, which we just happen to be, and then I'm going to go to approve and go into that document. And I just want to make a little change here. Let me change this number to 52. Okay, I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to look at the audit trail again. So here again, if I pull down the category, sort by date time, it was approved, it was recalled, and then it was approved. If I go to the detail tab though, it shows me that Annabelle Martin updated my new budget field, and they updated the value of 25,252 and changed it to 52252. So it shows exactly what was, it doesn't tell you the GL unfortunately, but it does tell you what was changed and what to. The next button up here is your send email function. Now send email has to be turned on under maintenance application options. But assuming that you have your email information set up here and turned on, you can choose this email function here, and it'll let you choose from your employees, maybe a CC. It goes ahead and puts the subject of the document you're in, and then you could type a message, you know, please review XYZ GL code for corrections. I can hit send, and they would get this as an email. The second to last button is attachment. Attachment isn't commonly used in budget, but it is here, so I'll show it anyways. If you click on the attachment, you have two options right here. If the document already exists on your computer, click on the folder to find it. If it does not yet exist and you want to scan it, choose the scan icon, and it'll open our scanning utility, where you can choose your scanner. Click scan now, the document will show up, then you can save it, with a file name, and it'll attach automatically to the worksheet that you're on. Then you would save here, or view it if you wanted, and then save or cancel. The very last button is print. This is just going to print this worksheet for you. So if I choose print, I have to pick the default form and then tell it whether I want to print to screen or printer. I'm just going to print it to the screen so you can see what that looks like. And this is what a worksheet would look like. Most reports and other items, anywhere you see this print option, if you choose print to screen, it's going to open this preview for you. From this preview, you can choose to print, or you can save as Excel or CSV. This is useful if you want to export this report into Excel to make changes or to get it, to do something, translation or something like that. You can also choose the little send via email button, and it'll go ahead and open Outlook and attach it to an email for you. We've finished with the document header buttons. Let's talk about the buttons in the bottom left here. The first one is add. If you click on that, it adds a blank line. You have to fill in the account information, and then when you do, it'll refresh the description with the GL's title. If you no longer need a line, you can use the red X to delete it. The third button is undo. If I start typing in here and realize, oops, I didn't mean to do that, I can just hit undo here and it'll pull it back. Transaction Wizard lets you pretend like you're doing a transaction and create a budget amount for that. What that means is you can put in $12,000, pick your 10-month distribution. I'm just going to pick 12 month even. Pick a GL code, a distribution code, and then whatever GL you want that to hit OK, and it'll delete the entries and recreate them, and then there's that $12,000 right there on this line. The next option, and we're going to come back to this one when we start talking about salary worksheets, but I do want you to remember where this icon is. I call it the two little heads typically when I'm referring to it, but it's the Import Salary Worksheet Data button. When you click this button, it removes all GLs related to salaries, and then it goes and looks inside of Salary Worksheet for salary information and imports that into the worksheet. What I mean to say, or what that means, it translates to, is you do not need to budget salaries manually. You'll do your salaries in Salary Worksheet, your benefits in Salary Worksheet, choose how those benefits and salaries are allocated, and then when you click on this button, it'll import the relevant entries. So we'll talk about that more in a minute when we get to Salary Worksheets. The next option is Apply Formula. If you click that button, it opens up the screen that shows your columns. And right here, if you mouse over where it says Formula, it'll give you some examples. So you could increase your new budget by 5%, decrease it by 5%, increase projected annual, new budget plus projected. There's some examples here that would let you raise it by 3% plus the projected or minus the projected. The example I like to use is I like to take, we don't have any actuals here. So the example I'm going to use here is, first I'm going to move the numbers to the B column. That way we can do a formula. So I just said B equals D, and that moved them from D to B. Now I'm going to make D equal to B times 1.5. Select all my columns or all my rows, apply the formula, and now I've increased. Now this column has my old number, and the new budget is 50% greater than that. The very last button to talk about is the import button. If you choose the import button, it's actually import export, but if you click on that button, you'll be given two options in the budget module. You can either create a sample import template, or you can import new data from the template. Creating a sample is the same thing as exporting. If I click process right now, we're going to see that $18,000 in the template. There's our 18. So this worksheet could then be re-imported if we saved it. Then we could go to the import new data, choose that Excel file, hit process, and it would build us a new worksheet based off of that Excel file. Before we start talking about salaries, I want to just open it up and see if we have any questions about the budget entry screen, monthly distributions, narratives, the columns, the buttons, anything at all that we've talked about so far. If you have a question, go ahead and speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. All righty, we're going to move forward. The next thing to talk about is salary worksheet. Salary worksheet is used to budget your salary information on an employee-by-employee basis. You can assign benefits to that employee, and then you can distribute their benefits and their salary using a distribution code to multiple segments. So here's an example of one. I've got Martha Adams, $41,000 a year. Here's her relevant benefits, and it's being 100% distributed to 201. I could come down here and hit the plus sign, and I could move 50% now. 50% of her benefits in salary will show up in Department 301. The thing to note about these allocations is they tie directly to distribute worksheets. So here, where we told it we only wanted to see Department 101, if I open that worksheet, it will not import 201 or 301 into that worksheet. It only imports the relevant entries. So I'm going to make this one 101. That way, in a minute, when we test the import, it'll pick this one up, but it'll ignore the 201. Up here at the top, again, there's update % increase for a range of employees. If I hit the little arrow, this is where you open it up to do mass raises. So you can apply total raise or a portion of the raise. Earnings from, this is where you put a dollar value, so like 0 to 120,000, and then maybe choose my grant or my department, 101, and give everybody a 1% raise. If I hit check, everybody that has 101 as a grant would get a 1% raise. Another common thing that this particular, well, there's two other features that you can use this for, even though it was not necessarily designed that way. One would be to budget for an open position. So in this example, I want to create an open position for IT. I hit the new sign, and the employee ID might be IT open position or help desk. IT help desk open position. And I could put in an hourly rate, an estimated hours, FTE rate, salaries, etc. All right. And then I could add benefits to this hypothetical open position, and I could budget for 3, 4, 5 open positions that we plan to fill this year. If I know when I'm going to hire them, I could use the action date to make it relevant at that point in time as well by using the little monthly allocation based on hire date. The other way this screen can be used is to represent a group of people. I have a YMCA that I implemented, and they use this to represent a group of lifeguards. So, for example, level 1 lifeguards. And then you put in a salary. So after the salary is calculated here for me, this is representative of 1 lifeguard working for 1 full year. What I want to do is make it representative of 4 lifeguards. And maybe I add the benefits first. I am foregoing that part for time, but you know, say that benefits were here, allocation was here, and I wanted this to represent 4 lifeguards, I would change my FTE rate from 100% to 400%. Notice the salary stays the same, but the new salary right here is now representative of 4 employees. The benefit amount is based off of the new salary. So each one of those benefits would have increased 4 times, and then that amount would have been distributed however you needed to distribute it. So then they would create another one, level 2 lifeguards, maybe it represents 8 people, level 3 lifeguards represents 2 or 3 people, and then when they're done, you know, that's for a high turnover position where they don't need to name the lifeguard. They just know they're going to have 8 lifeguards over the course of the year, and this is the estimated hours they're going to work. Okay, so when you finish here and you are ready, you know, you've gone through and you've done each and every one of your employees and they're ready to import, you go back to your worksheet. Let me stop for 1 second and mention that there are 2 ways that the worksheet can work. So by default, when you click this button, it will match exactly the segments all the way down to the GL. So what that means is if I create a brand new worksheet, my worksheet's new, 2015, 2016 actually, and I click this button, it's not going to put anything on here because there's no reference for it to know which employees you want. What you have to do is add 1 line and then click the button. And by doing so, it's matching Fund 1, Department 101 with all of your employees and pulling those salaries. and there's the salaries. Now, notice it only brought Department 101. Now, let's say that I wanted it to bring everything. My options follow. I can either add another line for 201 and then run it again, and now I've got 101 and 201 on this worksheet. There's 101 and 201. Or I can go over to terminology. I get to terminology by going to maintenance, global options, terminology, and I can turn on salary roll-up based on fund or grant or department, whatever I want to base it off of. In this case, I'm going to put a checkbox next to my fund type, save it, close it. I'm going to close the worksheet and go back in. And what I just did by checking that box is I told it if the fund matches, don't worry about the department. So what that means now is I can create a new worksheet, create one line with just Fund 1 on it. It doesn't matter what department I pick now. I'm going to do 999 to prove that point. And it's going to roll up and give me everything that includes Fund 1 when I click this button now. So you can modify how it retrieves the data. But by default, it has to have an exact matching line. And if you use the roll-up, then it'll roll up, it'll match based off of whatever roll-up segment. In this case, I chose Fund. So it's giving me everything related to Fund 1. I know this can be a little complicated, so I want to stop for a second and see if there's any questions. All right. So the first thing you'll probably notice about these is that they came across as red. They're all red. And what that implies from earlier, you'll remember, is that they have narratives. So I can expand this and I can see this is the percentage of their overall rate that is being allocated to this particular segment. And then I can open up this one and see which employees are in each one. If I make some changes, I'm going to change Adams from 40,000 to 400,000. Save it. And now I can come back and re-click on this button. It'll remove all the lines, rematch them up, and re-import for me. And now I've got even more here. There's the 400,000, or half of it. So we've covered the basics. The one thing you may have noticed was creating a new employee here when I was given the example of an open position. This screen directly ties back on a 1-to-1 ratio with the workflow personnel tab. So 103, these employees are the ones I see in salary worksheets. And if I create a new one in salary worksheets, they'll be added to that workflows personnel tab. So I close out of here. I'm going to reopen the workflow so that it shows. And there it is, test, 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 test. with no salary info. If I delete it from this screen, it deletes it from the salary worksheet. Notice it's, I might have opened it too quickly. Huh, that might have changed recently. Or we didn't remove it. Oh, I didn't save, sorry. I delete it and then I save it. Then I go over to salary worksheet and that employee's gone. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's how you determine which employees people get to see. They only see the employees that they're a member of that workflow. For sake of completion, let me go ahead and mention that there is one button up here in the top right that's not obvious what it does until you click on it. It's the benefit wizard, and the idea is after you've created your employees, you need to assign benefits. So you come up here and choose the benefit wizard. That lets you choose from your available benefits, pick off the employees to apply it to. You click add or remove to apply. If I did that, it would add a new line here with the default rate. The defaults and the benefit codes you have to choose from are set up under budget, setup, benefit rates. So here's where I can list, med 2, retirement 2. I can change the rates, change the default pay periods, set it as default or not, that kind of thing. And that's about it for salary worksheets. Again, salary worksheets ties over to the My Worksheet screen using the 2 little heads in the bottom left corner. When you click on these 2 little heads, it removes all salary related accounts. It then queries salary worksheet to find related entries based on whether or not you have roll-up turned on for a segment. If salary roll-up is off, it has to be an exact match, and if it's on, then it only has to match for the column for the segment that you rolled up on. Let's pop back to distribute worksheets for a second and just talk about how this is built and what it means. Distribute worksheets is the way that the budget administrator, again, generates your worksheet so that you don't have to start with a brand new blank worksheet. Typically, up here at the top, you're just going to call it annual budget. That's my recommendation, and that's what most people would recommend. You do not need to separate these by department unless you're going to have different dates or different options by department. Typically, all of these options up here apply to the whole entire budget and every department. So you just call, when you create a new one up here, call it annual budget, and that way each year, all you have to do is change your year, and now I just generated a 2017 worksheet. All right, I'm done with 2017. I change it to 2018. Now I just generated a 2018 worksheet. And so it's that easy to roll, that's why we call it annual, because all you have to do is change this date and maybe this date, and you've rolled forward for the next year. Once you set up the basics up here, you have to move down to worksheet assignments. This is where you will build out combinations of accounts that represent your entire company. So in this example, I've got Fund 1, Department 101, Fund 1, Department 201, Fund Department 401, and if I was really going to do them all, I would need a 301, a 990, a 998, and a 999. But this is just a sample, so I don't have them all, but you would. Every single segment that you want to budget needs to be somehow included in this list. Now, if one person is responsible for all the departments, I don't have to filter for a department. I can leave it blank, and all departments will show up on the worksheet when I generate it. So that's the case for program grant 117. You only specify them if they need to be filtered for that. Alternatively, if I took Department 101 out and this was just blank, it's going to give me a worksheet that's filtered only for Fund 01 and would include every single department. Then I could use that worksheet and I could filter inside the worksheet for whatever department. So in this example, this is an example of if it had multiple departments on it, I can click in the filter and say, let me see just 101. And now I'm budgeting for Department 101, even though my worksheet has all of them on it. So it's really up to you how you decide to distribute, whether you do one worksheet that includes 10 departments or you have 10 worksheets with one department. As long as all 10 departments get represented, that's all we care about. So you select the person's workflow. You select the name of a user that's responsible for the segments you're about to describe. Process, you have to check this box when you click on this gear to generate a worksheet. Description, you can make this whatever you want. When you do, whatever this description is, it will pop to here. So where it says budget document 4, that's the description administration. If I change it to administration 2, it would say budget document for administration 2. Condition is a filter. So the first, before I talk about condition, I just want to reiterate these. These are your true filters. This is where you're setting your range of accounts to query, what fund to query, what department to query. Now, if there is a subset inside here that I want to select or not include, I can use condition. If I click in the condition box, it just kind of drops down. So, but you want to make sure you click on the magnifying or the wand, the magic wand. If you click on that, your criteria is either in or not in, and then you can choose a segment. So you could say not in program, let's see, not in program 301 or 308. Save it. And now it's going to give me Fund 1, Department 101, these range of GLs, but it's going to exclude 301 and 308 program. Now the only thing else left on this screen that I didn't really mention is your cutoff date. Cutoff date is really is typically necessary when your history period goes into your current year. So for example, if this was a 3-year history, and so it's showing 1/1, my history is going to show 2014 through 2016, but it's trying to go to the end of the 2016 year, I have to tell it to cut off as of, the first of the month or today's date. I'm going to use today's date, but you could cut it off as of 3/1 or 2/29, however you wanted to cut it off. That way when you look at your worksheet and it says year-to-date actuals, it shows up until the cutoff date. All right. I'm going to erase this condition and generate a new worksheet for an example here. I just generated a worksheet, and as soon as I click yes, the system is polling ABILA MIP for budget and actual activities. And that's how it's creating the worksheet that we see here, is these are all based on actuals or budget activity. Well, these numbers that you see here are technically out of date. They only reflect MIP's balance as of the moment that we clicked on this gear to create the worksheet. It's not a live link. So right now, if I go make a JV into this account, it's not going to update my actuals. This worksheet has its own version of these actuals that are saved. And you can force them to update, but they will not update automatically. If you know these numbers are out of date because some transactions have been posted and you want them to reflect the new balance, you use the Refresh Worksheet Data button up here at the top. This button also allows you to modify worksheets in different ways, but the most common one is to refresh a column. So if I hit the drop down here for select an option, refresh current year budget column, refresh current year to date actual column, refresh prior year actual, oh, that's the one we want, the prior year actuals. So I would select that one, pick on the worksheet, hit process, and it would re-query Abila for the latest actual activity. Some of the other things you can do is set projected actual column based on formula, change the budget worksheet period. You could add a range of GL accounts, delete a range of GL accounts, search and replace account codes. So if you accidentally put Department 2 and you need to change that to Department 3, you could search for 2 and replace it with 3. You can duplicate budget worksheets, change your distribution code, the monthly distribution code, and these other ones are all referring to Abila and worksheets. This one will refresh budget worksheets with salary worksheet data. This option does the same thing as if you came down here and clicked on the head again. It goes and looks in salary worksheets for the latest salary amounts and repopulates them on the worksheet. So that's really all I've got for in terms of distributing, approving salary worksheets, my worksheets, refresh data. The only things we have left are reporting, and we're about to move into reporting now. I just want to stop for a second, see if there's any questions so far. All right. So we're just going to go in order here. Before we go straight into reports, I'll go ahead and show you document search. Document search is real basic. It shows you every document that is out there that belongs to your workflow. So I'm only seeing workflow 103, but I can also see other users than myself because this user is a member of my workflow 103. Now, this document, for example, is in Dana's queue. I can't open it to edit it. There's no edit button here, but I could use this little magnifying glass to view it if I wanted to. I could also see the audit trail of that document if I wanted to. If I click on the little tree, it'll show me the approval process for whatever document I selected. And then I have my print button on both sides. The next icon is reports. Reporting for budget is very basic. You have 2 reports and 2 formats. The 2 reports is either salary and benefit worksheet or budget worksheet. Either you want to see your salaries and benefits by employee, or you want to see the budget numbers that you've been working with. Both reports have a secondary cash flow format, which shows the same exact information, but it shows it broken out by 12 months. So let me show you both of those. This is the salary and benefit worksheet. Notice description is grouped, and the group description refers to the employee. So these are my employee, their salaries, and This is their salary and benefits combined for their subtotal there. And if I open it up, I can see the specifics that create those numbers. Now, if I prefer to see this in a month-by-month view, I can choose the cash flow option, and it gives me the same information, but it shows how that employee's salary is distributed throughout the year. The budget worksheet summary, you have to give it a date. Maybe you want to report on this year or last year, so you give it a date. And you also have to give it a status filter for the documents. So if you want to see everything, you change it from 0 to 14. And that range will show everything. If you don't want to see stuff that's in MIP, you can just do 0 to 10. And that's everything that's in Microix. If you just want to see stuff that's not been approved, you can do 0 to 0. So I'm just going to do them all because I want to make sure we've got some data. I might have to find a year that has data. There we go. And this is an example. It's grouped by revenue and expense. All accounts. And this should almost directly tie back to your worksheets. You can print, and on this form, you can save your columns. So if I remove this column, I remove this column, I remove this column, and I want it to stay like this, in the bottom left, there's a Save Grid Layout button. And if I click that button, it'll save this layout for future use. If I choose print, it'll print it to the screen where I can export it or print it if I want. All right. The next reporting option, jumping 2 buttons to the right, is Consolidate Worksheet Query. This report is different than all the other reports because it does not pull live data. This report pulls the data that is on your worksheet. So if in that example I used earlier, where you generated the worksheet and 5 minutes later you posted a gigantic JV, the worksheet does not indicate that that was posted. This report will not either. This report will show you what the worksheet shows you. So I'm going to run this just for an example here. And again, it's broken into categories, revenue, category, expense. And I can filter it, group it, break it down a little more if I want. And I can choose whether to pull it from Mobilla or Microix. You may have to play with this report a little bit, or each organization is going to have a little bit of a different setup. So you might consult with First Choice on getting this particular report to reflect what you would like it to reflect. We've already talked about refresh worksheet data, and the last report is display account balance. This is more commonly used in requisition, but is also useful in budget. You set your date range, and you choose one of the workflows that you belong to. And then you click View. And it's not going to work for me because I had made some changes to my segments. But what this does is it will go into MIP and pull your actual accounts based on your workflow's account restrictions. So if I restricted my workflow to only program 101, when I look at account balance, it's going to be filtered for Program 101. And it will only show those program accounts. It'll show actuals and budget numbers. And I apologize again that I'm getting this error currently. I got to work on that, but that's the only piece that I won't be able to show today. Feel free to go in. If you try to run this and it says something to the extent of this workflow does not have any account restrictions, that's typically because you didn't set any up. And the easiest way to restrict somebody just for that purpose is to just move over everything. If I'm restricted to everything, I'm not actually restricted, but the report will work. So that's the only note there, is that it runs off of your workflow's account restrictions. And that was display account balance. Alrighty, we're going to get into some of the admin maintenance type stuff. Probably only take us a few more minutes, and then we'll start summarizing and finishing up for conclusion. So under the Setup tab of Budget, there's 4 things. We already touched on benefit rates. This is where you come to set up your benefit rates and apply them as defaults to employees for the salary worksheet screen. If we go back to Setup, there's Maintain Monthly Distributions. And on this screen, this is a list of all the monthly distributions that you have created. So this is the 10-month distribution I created, where it has 0% in January, 0% in February, but it's doubled up for November and December. And I could come down here and edit it, and I could reallocate it however I wanted. So this screen's useful if you guys do a lot of the monthly distributions. This screen's useful to help you maintain those. Create monthly distributions is similar. You can either choose a document to generate it off of, or you can go to a bill of monthly allocations and review them from here. And then based on these, you could create one that matches these numbers. Not commonly used, but it's good to know that it's there. The last one is budget worksheet options. This screen is going to have you select a GL, and then you can either choose to prevent a GL edit or narratives are required. So on a workflow by workflow basis, specific to a GL, you can force a narrative, or if you just want to display the GL but not let them budget that GL, but maybe they need it for reference for some other GL, then you can prevent the GL edit to that account. And we have now touched on every single icon in the budget module. I'm going to jump over to maintenance and see if there's anything we need to talk about here. There's not really. We could talk document maintenance. This screen is an administrative screen. Only admins should have access to this screen. The first thing you have to do is choose that you want to work with budget type documents, and then this shows a list of every single document in the system related to budget. Now what can I do with these documents? I can do the same thing I did on document search. I can view it, audit trail it, approval tree it, or print it. But I can also use this bottom section here to change the document status to a different status. So I could remove, one of these that are in status 14 transferred to ABILA. I could choose that document and bring it back to status 10 so that I can make changes. Now, when I do that, notice what it says right here in the note. It says, note, unposted ABILA transactions for this document will be purged as well. And that's the whole reason I came here, is to mention corrections. If you transfer over a document and you make a mistake, whether it's posted or not, you would come to document maintenance and change the status back to status 10 or lower. When I move it to status 10, it's going to give me this note, and if it was unposted, it's going to delete whatever was in Abilla. If it was already posted, then it won't do anything until I send over the correction. So by that I mean I go back to budget, I go to approve, I open up the one I just moved, I go in here and change it from 2,000 to 3,000, and then I resubmit it. On this screen, as soon as I hit OK, this is what happens if it was already posted. It says the document you are about to transfer was already posted. Would you like to delete the posted session and retransfer the Microix budget document? So yes, we would, and done. So now in Abilla, I have an unposted budget document for 3,000, and the original 2,000 never existed. The only other way to make a correction would be like with a new document. So instead of correcting that original, if I already had a $2,000 budget balance, I could create a new worksheet for that line and just increase it by 1,000, and that would have the same net effect. 2,000 plus 1,000 would be the same as changing the 2,000 to a 3,000. Alrighty. That is everything I have for you guys today in a nice condensed web format for you. I'm just curious if you guys have any questions. Teresa, do you have anything to add? Anything I missed you want to cover?
No, I think you covered everything pretty thoroughly. Any questions from anyone on the call? Well, if you do think of questions later, you can always email me or call us at First Choice. We'd also be, and I know the Microix staff too would be willing to set up a one-on-one with you and your staff if you have other people you think might be interested in seeing this. And if there are no questions, I guess we'll end it for today. We went over a little bit, but I think, Levi, thanks so much for doing the demo for us.
No problem.
Levi and Teresa, this is Kevin. I just want to say thanks to both of you, Levi, for your presentation. And to ask you, Teresa, is there any other resource information that we could reference either online or in any channel that you could think of as a follow-on to today's?
And requester guide. It's basically a Word document that breaks down with screenshots some of the processes we talked about today. It's real basic. It's for your end user who's never used it before. They can kind of follow it through step by step to complete a process. I can give that to Teresa, and she can just forward it out to the rest of you guys. And then there's the full-blown 400 plus page, Microix workflow modules guide that covers every single button, every single feature, and it's a lot larger and a little more cumbersome, but I'll include a link to that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Levi.
Yeah, thanks, Levi. I'll get that out to everyone on the call. I did send out in today's invite just a one-page sheet about the budget module. And like I said, we'd be happy to get back on this and go into it a little deeper with your staff if you're interested. Otherwise, we will be in touch. And thanks for attending.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Levi. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.